Hi, everyone. Okay, so as we look forward and we think about our first Ready Reading textbook lesson next week on key details in text, I wanted to kind of introduce what all of that means first and give us some opportunity to talk a little more about it before we actually jump into the lessons next week. So I'm going to be reading a story right now, and the story is called Sneakers, the Seaside Cat. And as I'm reading the story, I want you to consider key details. Why do we do that? When we ask and answer questions about the text that we're reading, it helps us comprehend it. And what I want you to keep in mind as I'm reading this story to you are the W questions. Who, what, where, when, and why. As you are listening to this story and you're asking yourselves those questions and answering those questions, it will help you comprehend or understand the text that I'm reading to you. Okay, so let me get started with the text. Again, it is called Sneakers, the Seaside Cat. Here we go. Once there was a little fat cat, and his name was Sneakers. He had 4 white paws, and almost all the rest of him was inky black. He lived with a little boy and his father and his mother. One day, the little boy and his father and his mother went to the seashore. When Sneakers came to the sea, he was delighted. He could smell fish. He thought he could catch them like mice. But when he dipped his careful little white paw into the blue sea, the water was wet. And it was cold, so Sneakers decided to go out in a field and look for mice instead. The field was full of butterflies, so Sneakers chased one, but the sea was bothering him. All around him, he could smell it, beyond the smell of the pine trees, and he could feel it. It excited him, and way off, he could still hear it. Boom, boom, boom. Sneakers did not know that boom, boom, boom was the sea pounding the rocks off the shore, out on the ledges of the sea. Then he heard, ha, 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 scream, scream. And he wondered what it was. First, it was a shadow. Then it was a bird. Only it was such a big bird, it didn't seem very frightened of a little black cat with white paws. Sneakers didn't like to think about birds who are not afraid of cats, so he went for a walk on the beach. Little shrimps about the size of a cat's claw jumped about in the sand. Sneakers ruffled up his fur and lifted his feet higher as he walked along. Pounce! He nearly caught a sand shrimp, but sand shrimps were jumping all the time, and they were too little to bother with anyway. Then up ahead on the yellow sand, Sneakers saw something. It was yellow and pink on the outside. Sneakers had never seen anything that shape before. Then he crept up to it and peeked in. There was nothing in it. He put his head down to it and listened. There was a roar like the ocean's roar in it, but there was nothing in the shell. So he lifted up his paws and he walked along the beach some more. He saw a big flat thing with long bent legs. Sneakers could see the 2 black shiny eyes sticking out of its head. Sneakers crept after it, but the crab's eyes stuck so far out of its head that they had seen Sneakers coming. The crab scuttled down to the water's edge, but Sneakers was too quick for it. He hit the crab with his paw to see what it would do. Crab shot out one of its long bent legs and grabbed a hold of Sneakers' little white paw in its crab claw. It hung on and pinched Sneakers a little. Sneakers didn't like that at all. He snatched his paw back so fast that the crab fell off. Then he licked his paw and ruffled out his fur and walked on down the beach. Something was happening in the air. The air was wetter and heavier. Sneakers could feel it on his tender little nose. And he looked around. There were great puffs of smoke blowing in from the sea. They smelled of the sea and came drifting in puffs as big as clouds until you couldn't see the sun anymore. Everything was gray and the land beyond was all dim and dark like one big shape. My, but I'm glad I saw that, thought Sneakers. In the morning, it was still foggy. Down in the depths of the sea, the fish swam slowly and the starfish pointed their spiky arms. Lobsters crawled into lobster pots and sea urchins clung to the rocks. Then the sun came out of the gray and drove the fog away. It was low tide and all around was seaweed. Then Sneakers heard a little sound. It was like creaky breathing. It was the seaweed popping. My, I'm glad I heard that, said Sneakers. And he sat and warmed himself in the sunlight and watched the light on the waves. The next day, Sneakers and his family left the seashore. All the way home in the car, Sneakers thought soft little cat thoughts about the sea. So, again, Sneakers, the seaside cat. When we talk about key details, when we ask and answer questions about a text, it helps us better understand what it is that we're reading. I want you to consider the who, what, where, when, and why when you are thinking about what the story is about and the important details that are contained in it. We are going to come back together and we're going to talk more about it.